there and still has some very talented women at the helm. And with that, I'll turn over to Diane.
Thank you. I never knew only 30 companies made it to $1 billion. Of course, it was harder to make it to $1 billion 10 years ago because $1 billion was more money, so it's getting easier. So I guess I'll just, I'll talk about my personal experience, and then later I guess we'll. Interestingly enough, I'll just put Ann on the spot a little bit. She wasn't at all involved, but before I did VMware, I was in one startup before the one with Hummer Winblad, where I found it very difficult to get people to have confidence in me. And so then I helped out at a startup that Hummer Winblad had, and they really needed to do some things, and I found it very difficult to get the VC board to have confidence in me. And so I decided to go off and start my own company, and they brought in the CEO that they brought in. And so when I started VMware, I actually thought, well, I'm not going to do this for very long, but I'll help these guys get it going because I clearly know how to get these things going. And we talked to some VCs, and they didn't understand what we were doing. They were kind of looking for a killer app, and we were thinking what we were doing was way bigger than what they thought we were doing, and we thought they would destroy us if we took their money. So we didn't take their money. But I do know, some really great people invested in the company, and I did it in one day. And one of them was the president of Stanford, John Hennessy. Another one was Andy Bechtolsheim, one of the founders of Sun Microsystems. So there were some very good people that I knew that thought that this was going to be a good company. And we had a lot of very good, the founding team was very, very strong engineers. As we went along, there were a few times a lot of venture capitalists wanted to come into the company, and I would always talk to them, and they were tier one venture capitalists, and I could tell every time that the first thing they were going to do was fire me. It was just so obvious, and I went back to them and asked them, and they agreed. They said, yes, we would have fired you. So it's very difficult as a woman to build a company if you need VC money. It's just the way it is. But I do think it's changing, and it will change as more and more women get engineering degrees, and as more and more awareness is out there, more and more women become venture capitalists. I thought that was fascinating that women-led companies were much more likely to happen when there was a woman VC. It makes complete sense to me. Because there were never any women at any of the VC firms that I talked to, or any women in the groups that I talked to. Maybe there were women there. But anyhow, so that's my experience, and I thought maybe that would be provocative and we could get going.
Diana, not to let you quite off the hook, because, every time I talk to venture capitalists about kind of their decision-making criteria, there are some hard criteria, which are sort of the industry focus, the stage of development, and so on. Some things that you can actually quantify right on the whiteboard, and nobody has any quarrel with, that's where we want to go. But it's much more on some of the softer things where the real distinction between who's great and who's not great in making decisions is. And one of them, you guys said it was economically driven, and we really don't look at gender. On the other hand, a young woman, a woman who is in childbearing years, is considered to be something of a risk from the standpoint, if she has children, how will her focus be changed? Will the business still be top priority? So it may not be quantified, but it's like there is some probability.
I should add that I was pregnant when we founded VMware.
But you didn't take the venture money, right? But then there's a second one with regards to VM, and that is you were in business with your husband. And
he took a one-year leave from Stanford, yeah.
But I can think that many venture capitalists would say, I don't want the complication of a married couple, because if the marriage blows up, the business blows up. Was that ever raised to you, or either directly or inferred?
Actually, he was back at Stanford when we were talking to VCs. I didn't have that. I did have that problem. He stayed involved with the company, sort of one day a week, and in recruiting senior male executives to the company, it was a big issue for them. I always had to go to great lengths to show them how different our roles were.
Okay, so there are many things that are kind of subtle, that are more on the human side, that really can't be quantified, but when you're doing these models, as Joyce mentioned, the model in your head is this maybe looks like an additional risk factor. Now, I asked each one of these women to prepare at least 2 recommendations for those of you in the group who might be interested in being involved either as entrepreneurs or as investors. What can you do to improve the probability of success for you as a woman? So it's all yours. This is all new to me.
Okay, so the points that I would make, so one, a lot of people say, well, go find a mentor, right? I think because part of it is the people that you're in contact with, your networks, and I know there's some interesting research going on here about your social networks and how women use those. But it's very important in the business that I'm in what your network is and how you use that, because that's your source of deal flow, that's your source of recruiting and business relationships and so forth. So I think finding a mentor who is plugged into these networks is very important. Someone who is going to be willing to kind of show you the ropes. And I will point out that actually men make pretty good mentors, I think, for women. And in my own personal experience, I'd never had a woman mentor for whatever reason. I don't think I ever identified someone or find that connection. But I have found a couple of very good men that have been great mentors for me, that were more senior in the industry. They had established further along in their careers. For whatever reason, they're willing to take me under their wing and help me through this. And the one thing that I look back is they both actually have daughters, which was an interesting factor. And I think maybe there was an emotional, kind of piece to that motivated them to want to do that. But I think find a mentor. I think that's a helpful piece of advice. And the second thing I would say for women is to be confident and be authentic. And I think oftentimes there is, not always, but oftentimes there is a gender difference in how women present themselves, and approach these things versus men. And I'll just give one example. So I did this panel once before for women entrepreneurs, for alums of MIT. And a woman came up to me afterwards and she said, I really want to start this business, and I'm at this stage. And I said, well, for the stage that you're at, you really should just try to raise some angel money from your friends and family and people. Well, I don't really want to ask people for things. I don't want to ask a favor. And when I think back to a number of men in similar situations, they will approach this from the standpoint of calling on your friends and family and saying, hey, I got this great opportunity, and I'll let you in on this, right? And so it's just a completely different mindset of how you present yourself in the opportunity. And I think, investors want to see that level of confidence, that you believe in what you're doing, you are going to be successful, you're going to make it happen, and without being, cocky about it, right? So I think to really find the thing that you're passionate and you believe in and believe in yourself and present yourself that way. I think that's important for any entrepreneur, whether it's a man or woman, and to be authentic in the process. I don't think you need to emulate male behavior just because you think that's the right way to do it. I think you have to find your own voice and be authentic to what you're doing, but be sure you convey that level of confidence about what you're doing.
So I just want to clarify a couple things. So you remember I said we had 133 meetings to raise that first fund. When you're a first-time fund, if you screw up, you're out of business. So every deal that you make is super, super important. And our first investment was a woman CEO, Heidi Reisen. I had to help Heidi raise her B round while she was 7 months pregnant, just hoping that we could raise it within 60 days, which we did. Successfully she raised that. I've been on the board of 3 husband and wife teams. 2 of those companies have been acquired for a significant gain. 1 became a public company. It was really interesting that the first time I went to the board meeting of the public company, the husband and wife team, the wife also was pregnant when the husband and wife presented to us. It's a little company in New York with about a $600 million market cap today called The Knot, K-N-O-T. Carly, the woman, they were equal owners, had brought the baby to work, and they were really excited that I was on their board and we had funded them. They didn't exactly know how I would feel about bringing the baby to work, so she hid the baby. I said, well, where's that baby? Because I just assumed they were a young couple, very, very talented, a 2-person startup, which is quite an accomplishment to start with 2 people and build a public company, profitable, growing, and with a reasonable market cap. I think this mentor thing is frankly a crock of shit. I hear this all the time, and I don't ever recall. I recall lots of people giving me great advice, lots of people telling me I was really doing the wrong thing, where sometimes I definitely was, sometimes I wasn't. But I do think that if you need to seek so much help along the way, it is really a competitive marketplace that we invest in. And you really have to be pretty rough and tumble to even really go from point A to point B, especially start out to the kind of success. That's pretty high heights to go to where VMware was, but even the not. That you have to be a constant learner. You have to trust your own good judgment. You have to make sure you're making good judgment. You have to be aware of your flaws yourself. You can't be seeking a lot of pats on the back, especially if you're in the leadership position. It's an extraordinarily lonely job to be a CEO of a company. That's why all of our partners have been CEOs, and that's why I'm the only woman there. It's hard to find a lot of graduate women software CEOs, and because it's really, really a tough job. And any kidding about that is really not preparing you for the inevitable. And the skill base you need to actually be able to have a management team report to you. The natural skills, if you're a technician, the natural skills in how markets work, how to look from product to business models, that's really, really hard. And no one comes with a complete package to do this. You have to learn on the job. So unless you're a voracious learner, a person willing to sort of be out there and, get a lot of rocks thrown in your path. And in my industry still today, in the software industry, you're going to be, in a pack of men, no matter how you look at it. My dad, fortunately, as a basketball coach, on Saturdays used to take myself and my 4 sisters to the men's locker room to help him, label the lockers and whatever before the next basketball season. So I can tell you, you don't want to be in the locker room. So don't ever aspire for that. I think that's really one of the things I see women do the worst. They want to be like the men, and versus have their own identity. They're trying to reshape themselves to be someone they aren't. And Joyce said it. You have to be yourself. You're never going to be perfect. And it turns out that when you achieve success, you're always going to be over